Hello everybody, welcome to our launch tonight of Ghost Bones. I've just had some technical difficulty there, my mouse has just turned itself off, so I'll be sorting that out in a minute, but before we do that, I just wanted to say a massive congratulations to all of our incredible participants tonight who will be reading from Ghost Bones. A massive welcome to our audience and tell you a little bit about what you can expect. So tonight we will have exclusive readings from Amy Blackledge, Jack Faust and Chris Jenkins, and then we'll be following that up with some questions about how they created Ghost Bones, and we'll be opening it up to you, our audience, as well, to ask your questions. So in terms of housekeeping, we are live on YouTube at the moment. So if you do not want to be streamed live, please turn off your camera. But we would actually ask that if you do feel comfortable to do so, please do keep your camera on, because our wonderful writers will be performing tonight, and it's always good to see faces listening and engaging, and it's really encouraging. So we would very much welcome that. We do have the chat box available for you to access there, so any of your comments we can see, so please do put your encouragement in there for us. And we do advise that you watch tonight's event on speaker view. The only other thing is we want your questions, so please pop them in the chat box, send them to Lauren, who will pass them on to me, and I can ask the writers any questions that you have. Right, so to give you some context for this event tonight and this launch of our fantastic poetry pamphlet, it's for me, this is a really exciting night, because it's been a bit of a dark start to January, as the last 2 years has been, really. Coming back, it's been a long 7 weeks, and Write What's Next and all the incredible stuff that's been created on this project has created these kind of little bursts of light and joy over the last seven weeks that has kept us energized and excited. So that's what tonight's all about, really, is celebrating that and celebrating the people that have created that work. It's my absolute pleasure to bring you this poetry collection, which is edited by T.S. Eliot Prize winner Joelle Taylor. We're bringing you Amy Blackledge, Jack Faust and Chris Jenkins. The collection itself was created on one of WOW's Write What's Next mentoring courses, which was a course we started in September last year, and it matched writers from the Liverpool City region who had faced various barriers to work in the arts with established poets, writers and directors. It was part of developing new skills and connections and collaborating on brand new creative work. Our emerging writers worked for 16 weeks together and all over the last 2 months as well. And as I said before, this particular group had the pleasure of working with Joelle Taylor. And what you've produced tonight is a complete poetry pamphlet of your work called Ghost Bones, which explores gender politics, identity, the personal and political, through the lens of unique form, language and stories. From prehistoric creatures to Greek mythology, Ghost Bones is a poetry collection that looks at the past we paved for ourselves in an exploration of gender, heritage, and the liminal multitudes of identities we hold. That is kind of one of those wonderful blurbs that we always use, but it's a book that is alive on the page. It's active. It's talking about things that matter and that I think are really going to spark everybody's imagination and creativity as well. So I'm really excited. So the first reader that we have tonight is Amy Blackledge, who has also been on other courses with us, such as Write to Work. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Blackledge. I'm a poet and an art historian. And I really write poetry because it allows me to engage with art on a really personal level in a way that my former academic writing never allowed. I practice what's known as ekphrastic poetry, which is an ancient Greek poetic tradition used to vividly describe works of art, both real and imaginary. Georgia, may I please have the first slide? Thank you. Since September, I've been exploring with Joelle how contemporary ekphrasis can move far beyond the mere descriptions of works of art by considering the life of the object, the contemporary voices such artwork might have, and the variety of responses poets can make to art. In a way, we've been exploring the dialogue between art and the poet. May I have the next slide, please? Thanks. My contributions to Ghost Bones has explored the uncomfortable experiences of obsession and possession and the objectification and violence against women in nature. I use ekphrasis and other sources of poetry to question the views that promote infatuation as an acceptable way of collecting and displaying within museums. Next slide, please. Thanks. This evening, I'm going to kick off this session by exploring a sculptural group, which is quite well known and is part of the Parthenon marbles that are kept and displayed in the British Museum. If you follow the news at all, you'll probably be well aware of the increasing pressures to return the Parthenon marbles to Greece. For those of you who may not know, in 1801, Lord Elgin claimed he gained permission to take the statues from the Turkish during their occupation of Greece. However, no documents have ever been found to verify this. He ended up taking over half of the surviving sculptures from the Parthenon and other sites around Greece. After Greek independence in 1832, Greece has been keen to restore its looted monuments and artworks, an ambition that continues today. Before I begin my poem, I just wanted to give a quick content warning that there will be a reference to rape. May I have the next slide, please, before I begin? Thanks, Georgia. Fragmented fragments after female figures from the Parthenon British Museum. Possessing other cultures is your culture. You prefer our legs spread wide for the nation's schoolboys, selling your postcard tap for old tits. Our fractured anatomy allows it. You expect to see our headless remains, evidence of your colonial potency. Captivate, excavate, subjugate. Lads on the pole plundered the Parthenon. Footnote. The most accurate account regarding the capture and display of the Parthenon marbles in Britain is given by the Chorus of Elders, which consists of the remaining Parthenon statues now currently housed in the Acropolis Museum, Athens. For further information, see Modern and Ancient Accounts of Abduction translated into English, London, 1801, which, with permission, I will share here tonight in full. Chorus 1. Smoothly gliding along the sea crest, his erect torso floats over a bubbling lather, concealing his enormous emerald-scaled fins. His onyx eyes blazed with void, burned through a wired charcoal beard that sagged over his collapsed jowls and tightly closed mouth. From the center of his forehead, splendid alabaster spiked antlers sprouted, fanning wide beyond his colossal head. 2. While reclining on the sandy shore enjoying the company of Dionysus, our sister sat unaware. As he sped near, a great roar erupted from the ocean depths. Gulls gathered and screamed in warning, but our sisters, with their backs to the sea, did not sense the threat. 3. Holding a sawtooth shark sword and a giant tortoiseshell shield, he swam soundlessly past the rhythmic white-capped waves. Crossing the tide line, he grabbed his prize, attacking all those who attempted to rescue them. 4. He wrapped his enormous arms around the wrists of 3 sisters and dragged them onto his side, swimming away with lightning speed. Their shrieks filled the ozone air, fading as the stars emerged. Such was the commotion in the waves that day that sea foam lapped the shores of Greece for years, and our tears burst her riverbanks 100 times over. 5. He swam far beyond the sea to an island with a great serpent river. Reaching the riverbed, he took one sister at a time and raped her on the beach, while the other sisters helplessly pulled at his beard and tore at his flesh. When he finished, he swam off, leaving them abandoned in a foreign land. We're the only welcomed immigrants here. New captors keep us kept. Vigilant stares and cues of fright seers, getting intimate between our open knees. Silenced and armless in this glass house, we will fly, leaving a hole to swallow you. Alternative object label, object type, shattered female bodies. Museum number, 1816-061-097. Title, Hebe, Hecate, Artemis, or Hestia, Dione and her daughter Aphrodite, or Demetra and Persephone, or two Horai, perhaps the Lycia in the lap of Gaia, certainly not Achilles reclining amongst the daughter of Lycomedes, or Iris running from hacksaws. Date, preceding Saint Ethelgryphu, daughter of King Alfred the Great in the year of our horde. Producer's name, Elgin. Culture, ours, finders, keepers, losers, weepers. Material, firm and yielding. Dimensions, hubba hubba. Find spot, that country that has no money now. You remember the place, you partied and snorted cocaine there in the 90s. Curatorial notes, expatriated for their own safety, now protected by the glorious and gorgeous St. George. Thank you, that's the end of that poem. With that poem, I was really looking for a way of considering the kind of Greek myths that emerge with women being abducted by sea monsters. And I wanted to sort of draw parallels between that narrative with the plight of refugees and migrants traveling by sea to both Greece and the UK. I also wanted to consider the idea of using the chorus of elders, which is traditionally used in Greek tragedies, as a way of having a witness of the abduction. For my second poem, I continue with the theme of abduction, and I consider what happens after an object is acquired or looted, in other words, through acts of violence. In this work, I explore a collection of objects known as a cabinet of curiosity. Such collections are an early predecessor of modern museums, although in most cases they were never open to the general public. Georgia, may I have the next slide, please? Thanks. This poem I'm about to read considers a woodcut that illustrates a museum belonging to Ferrante Imparato in Naples, which was published in 1599. It's a really, really famous image, and it was circulated all around Europe. About 30 years later, Robert Burton, writing from Christchurch in Oxford, wrote his famous work, The Anatomy of Melancholy, which is a rather lengthy book, all about the causes and cures for what we now understand as clinical depression. And in his work, he writes specifically about cabinets of curiosities. On his section on dealing with melancholy caused by too much study, which he himself suffered from, he recommended viewing cabinets of curiosities such as this one illustrated. And in cases where you couldn't visit one, he actually thought that looking at illustrations was just as effective. Okay, so I'm just going to read my next one, which is The Cure for Melancholy. Sobek materializes from a murky bog, mapping purgatoried remains. He gathers acquaintances to mourn into uniformly spaced splinters of allure, enticing inappropriately prolonged gawking, idolizing an askew cosmos of unordinary things. Exercise rectified of mind and body, a catalog of curious and rare bodies. One dried, seashells with spiky protrusions, an inflated blowfish still in danger, two severed, part of a ladder-toothy xylophone sawfish, a solitary hanging pelican's head, three bound, a two-headed dog jauntily crossing his paws, a single gargantuan rodent posturing on its hind legs, four pinned, a giant boulder claw closed shut, a caduceus signifying the thieves that filled the room, five stuffed, kissing serpents, one looped, one uncurled, an acrobatic armadillo balancing, six sewn and stitched, Goliath spiders and beetles crawl concrete, barkless seed pots shimmer smooth, seven stabbed, shell-shocked juvenile oarfish, snapping walrus with needle tusks, eight split, calcified coral branches demarking sea from earth, ornamental exotic feathered totems, 9 sliced, a lone bird peeping from its hanging nest, jagged rocks sprouting proud plant foliage, 10 sprayed. Sea butterfly wings waiting to be embraced, double-bodied lizard fanned like the Vitruvian man. A microcosm vacuum suffocates tiny songbirds chanting, gurgling marine life, thrashing paw steps in dried leaves. Partitioned by violence, slanting each to relic, perpetuating a cycle of slaughter, grieving, and wonder. If looking is the cure, collecting is the cause, that insatiable lust to lick more specimens. Thanks so much. So with this poem, I just really wanted to highlight the irony of displaying so-called treasures within a space that both alleviates and encourages melancholy. Today, we might look at an image like this and think it's a bit ridiculous, but we might also be struck by the fact that it has quite an aesthetic arrangement meant to kind of elicit visual delight. But when you look really closely at something like this, you see what you're witnessing here is actually a display of violence committed against nature. Ironically, this makes Cabinet to Curiosity a space for mourning. And in turn, I'd actually argue that modern museums are very much a similar space. We often see artworks that are severed from their original settings and context, placed to look attractive on museum walls. Recent research suggests that looking at art in museums can improve your mental health, which is great. But I would also argue it's also a space that's slightly deeply unsatisfying, where we're always reminded of loss and the passing of time. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Amy. That was fantastic. I absolutely love this. I used to work in a museum before I worked at writing on the wall, and I always used to kind of walk around and see exactly the same thing, and it did spark creativity, but it also it made you think about things on different layers, and I love how you pulled that into your poetry and explored that. And the other thing to say to everybody just briefly is that Amy's not only thinking about those ideas and having the layers of the different ideas, Amy is also very experimental with form. So when this book is going to be available in a few weeks to buy, that will also be an extra treat when you're reading it as well. So many layers. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Cheers.
So I'm now going on to our next reader, who is Jackdaw Faust, who is a trans artist and writer originally from Surrey. They had a keen interest in creative arts and paleontology from a young age. We're very scientific today. A passion they have carried with them into adulthood. They currently reside in their home in Liverpool along with their cat, who is with them today, where they make digital art and write poetry. Welcome, Jackdaw.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, I'm Jackdaw. If nothing else, I'm here to prove that writing poems doesn't mean you're a good speaker necessarily. This is probably going to be a lot less professional than Amy, but that's okay. That's just my style. So my section of the book is titled Inserte Sedis, which is a Latin term used in taxonomy to refer to things of an uncertain placement, whether it be biologically, genetically, or anything like that. And that kind of theme runs through my work, I think, of never really knowing where something belongs. And I explore that through various different, I guess, what's the word? I probably should have written something for this, but various different ways throughout my section. Mediums, yes, thank you. So the first poem I'm going to share with you tonight is kind of inspired by my love for animals, both living and dead, and it is the fable of the deer and the wolf. The bloom of nature turning paints the forest dappled green, a banquet for the heartbeats that make home among the trees, easy pickings for an ambush of the wolf who hides unseen as they watch the wary progress of the deer across the floor. A tightrope trap that's broken by a single step misplaced, antlers down and body bristling at the monster that they face. But their eyes are drawn to ivory teeth and carnivore and grace as they beg to learn the ways of their unexpected mentor. A hunter sees an opening and readily agrees, and from that day on the deer is not a creature made to flee. Bloodied hooves and antlers sharpened on the bark of trees, a partnership of hunters, something never seen before. But green gives way to barren lands where prey is hard to find, scavengers with empty bellies always on their mind. Without the bounty of the kill the deer could once provide, the wolf picks up the scent of partner, rendered prey once more. Fear gives way to anger. This betrayal won't back down. Drooling teeth are challenged by hooves striking frozen ground. A brief and brutal skirmish, almost silent, save the sound of a quiet whimper and a thump of fur against the floor. A moment's pause, a desperate nudge, but no life left to show. Wolf granted a grave of scarlet scattered across the snow. The deer emerges triumphant and utterly alone, frost settling on the ruins of the life it had before. So watch out when wandering woodland shrouded in the mournful dark. Look out for bloodied hoof prints and scratches in the bark. For the wind whispers a tale of what strange creature left this mark. A tale of something hungry that's not quite a deer, not anymore. Thank you. Yeah, I think nature in particular is very useful for trying to conceptualize the idea of pain that changes you, and evolution on a whole is kind of evolving to fit the environment so that you survive, but it's very much a one-way process. Once you've changed because of what's happened to you, you can never really go back to how it was before. Yeah, okay, the next piece I wasn't originally going to perform today, but in light of recent events I felt important, and thank you, Amy, for letting me add this last minute. So as mentioned in my intro, I am trans, and surprisingly, that's something that comes up a lot. It's very difficult in this kind of environment for that to not be an important part of who you are. Yesterday, the governor of Texas directed the Family Protective Services of the state to treat any instance of gender affirmative care towards children as child abuse, and wants all of the parents who support and accept their children to be investigated. They directly cited the recent Bell versus Tavistock case in the United Kingdom as inspiration for this bill. And obviously this poem was written a long time before this happened, but it is just a recurring theme in the UK. One of the most important things, both, I suppose, in nature and in history and our communities, is our children. So this poem called Statistic was written as from a place of, I suppose, anger more than anything. Thanks, Moxie. And yeah, I'm in light of recent events, it felt important to perform it. So here we go. Statistic. They tell us, think of the children as they strip them bare under the guise of protection, left in the limbo of years-long lists, evicted from their bodies. They force them into shapes they are not made for. And when those tiny bones eventually break, they were confused, they were brainwashed, they were indoctrinated, they were. Are you satisfied with their safety? Now you have protected them under 6 feet of soil. Thank you. Yeah. The last poem I'll be sharing today kind of ties into this theme of change and death, and is also, I suppose, one of the running themes throughout my section. Because aside from animals and taxonomy, my main interest is fossils. This one isn't actually in the book, but it's the only one I have, so just use your imagination. I've been interested in paleontology for a very young age. I grew up with the Walking with Dinosaurs series, and that has been a huge inspiration to me. I think now, with the benefit of hindsight, it is in a way quite funny for a trans person to be so obsessed with genetics and taxonomy and where we all came from and what we are and what we're not. And one thing, for those who don't really know much about this, which is understandable, one thing that always annoyed me as a child is people mischaracterizing certain animals as being something they're not. For example, people saying things are dinosaurs, like pterosaurs, dimetrodon, anything like that. And I suppose now my little child me's obsession with making sure people weren't misidentifying things was perhaps some form of foresight. And I think in a way that's influenced this. So the poem I'm about to share now is actually in 3 parts in the book, that kind of as a byline that runs through the whole thing. But I'm going to perform the entirety of it here together. And it is called Dimetrodon. You mind? I'm so sorry. Moxie also was involved in the creation of all of these, and she wants to let her contributions be known. Okay, Dimetrodon. A dimetrodon is not a dinosaur. If you've ever seen a plastic tube full of those Jurassic Park boneless chickens and there's a low slung shape with a sail back, then that's a dimetrodon. It's so easy to dismiss another extinct shape of entertainment, but they are as unfamiliar with these Cretaceous caricatures as we have become with their low slung shapes and sailbacks. How many know that their ghosts haunt the spirals of our genetic code? Bones long since settled in soft sediment and silence, the family we forgot. The first fish to make fins into fledgling legs and make indents in the virgin sand, these shaky steps of a pioneer gave way to countless ancestors. In all the footprints that overlap theirs, how many know their name? A dinosaur is not a dinosaur either. We are fed broken-wristed lizards who wreak havoc on big screens with scaly hides, instantly recognizable and yet a stranger to their own bones. When the last raptors walked the Earth apocalypse and their kin took wing into the future, did they ache? Knowing for all their sharp teeth and sickle claws, they were destined to the realm of almost. Would they ache to know in death they were plucked from their plumage, rendered B-movie caricature, unfamiliar to their children who preen their wings on faded billboards and light the sky with songs first forged by those who survived the end of days? Does it matter if most people can't tell the difference between a bear dog, which isn't a bear or a dog, and a dog bear, which isn't a dog, but is a bear? Why bother to catalogue the canines of Thylacosmilus, Barbarophilis, Creodonta, Smilodon, when all can be swept into the pile of sabred cat, neatly dumped in a bin of extinction? Does it matter? When I'm aged beyond bone, will a facsimile of me be packaged and sold along the descendants of those who wrought my obsolescence? Buried under false graves, my legacy outsider, even in death? Will our lives be reshaped into evening entertainment, streamlined and sanitized until our future doesn't know their past, as they sing the songs we first forged from hard-won battles and half-healed wounds? I fight for the footprints I leave in the silken sand, but the tide is coming in. An ocean of obscurity, awash with indifference, smooths out my struggle and buries me in soft sediment and silence. A dimetrodon is basically a dinosaur, right? I mean, it looks like one. What's the difference? Does it matter to the dead if they sleep under false graves? Thank you. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, thank you for writing on the wall, for providing this opportunity for me.
Thank you so much, Dr. That was incredible. And what really strikes me about your poetry is that it feels like a space for exploration, and also that you're writing about something that's really urgent and fresh and right on the edge, but your rhythm is ancient. And I love how, like you've got that real, like, it's almost like I know it, and I've never heard you perform it before. So thank you so much. That was incredible. Our next poet tonight who will be reading for us is Jenkins. who is a writer and performer from Liverpool, working in theatre, film, spoken word and comedy. In 2016, he won the Liverpool Echo Comedian of the Year. He has performed numerous solo shows at Edinburgh Fringe, Latitude and Contact Theatre. He likes to create work that is vulnerable, playful and connects with people. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. Hello, people. It's lovely to do this tonight. It's been amazing working with Amy and Jackdaw and Joelle Taylor, and it's been a pleasure to work with Amy and Lauren and Ginny at Writing on the Wall as well. It's been an incredible opportunity, and as Amy said, I used to do comedy quite a lot, and did that professionally for a few years, and I've always done things with a bit of a comedic angle, but then I started doing the Write to Work course with Writing on the Wall, and then I did this mentoring course, and I started to take more of an interest in poetry. I really took to it, and I find something really enjoyable in it, and I started to write about more kind of serious topics, from childhood and from memory, and it was a funny process because I found it when I write comedy, I feel like adrenaline, and I feel like excited and that kind of thing, and then writing these poems really kind of took it out of me, took something out of me, which I hope is a good thing. And I found it difficult to revisit some of those places, but I'm really glad that Joelle Taylor helped bring them out of me, and it was a really lovely, supportive environment. So I've written 4 poems which are in Ghost Bones, and they're all about male figures in my life growing up, I'm going to read 3 of them tonight, so I'll read the first one for you. This poem is called Soft. It was so funny to you, a grown man, to have a son who was, in your words, a man of talc. What hardness should I have been? Rusty iron, or the riven wood handle of the spade you used to dig a hole in your childhood? What hardness should I have been? The black Bakelite plastic atop a tractor's gear stick, rattling, brittle, as an untamable beast roared beneath you, trying to break the winter's ground. What hardness should I have been? The ribbed glass in the porch door I used to strum with my fingers, its music now being swept up from so many pieces. What hardness should I have been? Terracotta shards on a patio, dirt spilled out, held together now only by exposed roots. Man of talc. Ignoring the weakness of that punchline, let's look at the powder you thought of me. Perfumed and soft, like a baby's bottom. Soft like the baby you could touch and hold, but still not feel anything. Soft cries with others, and the first laugh at myself. Thank you. Thank you for it's funny seeing all the silent clapping going on, but I'm just imagining I can hear it. So yeah, so that was so when we were doing the course with Joelle, I'd written a couple of poems up to that point, but like I really cared about the way they looked written. I thought of them as like written poems, and then Joelle encouraged us to write poems designed to be performed and spoken, and that was the first one I wrote in that context. Yeah, so that was called Soft. And yeah, so that's probably the angriest thing I've ever written as well. It's not, anger is not something that comes like that naturally to me and things like that. So, but that's just something I've always felt needed to come out of me. I'll read another poem now, and this is called Brother. And last summer I went on a family holiday with my brother, and I kind of felt like we weren't connecting that well, and I felt sad about that. And then when I came back to Liverpool, I wrote this poem, and it's called Brother. But he was stronger in will, physical strength. On this occasion, it saved my life. Without the slaps, I'd be found there dead in the safest of places, Grandpa's garden, on the concrete below a perfect grass lawn, cast in the shadow of an ancient sandstone wall. He was the bull, my brother, the thorn in my side, charging through life, everything done his way. He suffered our circumstances first. His will, serious, right, just, logical. It had to be. I was the fool, there to thwart, jest and cut, drawing red, weaker of two, jealousy, rivalry, afterbirth, yellow. I looked for easy wins. But here it was, in red, yellow, and grey, a wet, cracked, boiled sweet on a concrete paving slab. He hit the death out of me. In the panic, I had tried so hard to swallow. You struck me. If I had succeeded, the route back would have been too far. At some point, I gave over to you, and then heard the distant but loudest crack of a gun in a dark, faraway wood. From darkness, two glistening pieces shattered on the floor. Relief and disbelief, a water that filled my whole body. The bull doesn't see red, just movement and shadow. My brother raised me. I owe him everything, red, yellow, and grey. We ran in to tell my grandpa. Thank you. Yeah. So that was, another poem drawn from memory. About something that you never talk about among family, and you start to question, did that happen? But it did, and things could have been very different if my brother wasn't there. So it is quite something I would remember. And the third poem, I don't even know if I can call it a poem. So me and my partner, my girlfriend Emma, we had a baby 3 months, 3.5 months ago. His name is Griff, a Welsh name, and so he's a lovely little boy, and we're overjoyed. We're in love with him. And Emma's watching now. I should say thank you to Emma, because she's being an amazing mum, and she's incredible. And she went through a difficult journey in bringing Griff into the world, and she's just doing an amazing job of looking after him and giving him all the love and care that he needs. And so I'd written about my brother and other male figures in my family, in my life, and then Joelle encouraged me to write a poem about. She said, "Well, you have to write one about your son," and this is the poem I found the most difficult because like he's just like the most real thing that I've ever produced. Like that, he's the most like creative thing I've ever produced, and like so when you're like writing something, trying to write about him, it just didn't feel true. It didn't feel right, because it was like it just didn't feel like an accurate reflection of what you've created, or what we've been through, or what he is. So then I just wrote down the truest collection of thoughts that I could think about Griff, about my son, and I don't know if it's really I'm not sure if it feels like a poem. I think I'll know a bit more once I read it, because I've never really read it out properly. And it's in 3 kind of little chapters. It's a very short thing, but it's in 3 sections. So and kind of like I just wrote down the first dream I had about him. I'll read it. Okay, this poem's called Sun. Sun. I could mention the first dream I had about you. We discovered your twin upstairs. Abandoned horror in a secret room. How had we forgotten? Of course they existed. We bring them downstairs to share your crib, but later discover one of you on top of the other. Underneath is lifeless, limp, air escaped from their lungs. And now we can't remember which was which. Not that it would help, even if we could. And as I write this down, in the whisper of night, the floor creaks upstairs. Your mother wakes to feed you milk. While you flutter on the breast, a moth beats its wings. Adrenaline thrashes through me. You can't sleep for hunger. I can't sleep for fear. Two weeks ago, you smiled for the first time. But then your cries took on sadness. When will you learn fear? Who from? I just pray you never find yourself in oblivion. In that dream, there was one thing. The interior to a church, glowing, warm, stood at the entrance. My grandmother, Joan, now a saint. She held a key. We were invited in. Thank you. And that's it. Yeah, that. I'm sorry, I should have maybe given a bit of a warning to the intensity of the first bit of that poem. That is kind of, as I say, that kind of felt like the only thing I could write down, because that's after Griff had been, he was about a month and a half by that point, and that was genuinely the first dream I ever had about him. And I had to put it down somehow. And then also, this is the only poem in the collection in Ghost Bones where there's a female figure in the poem. And I just thought that was fitting to have that female inviting us in, because, that's the gift that my partner Emma has given us, so all my poems are all about these kind of like tricky male figures, but then it felt really amazing to see my grandmother in that dream. And that concludes what I meant to say. That's it. Yeah, I've done the 3 poems, and thank you all for listening. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Wonderful. It's really weird here looking at the silent clap, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Sealed in your little windows there. I really resonate with some of the things that you were saying there about discovering poetry and like as a different medium, because that's how it happened for me as well. And
really?
Well, I had a really strict view of what poetry was, and I was the same. I was very much like on the page, and it felt really restrictive. And then once I got a very amazing mentor called John McAuliffe, showed me that actually poetry is infinite space to explore huge emotions, and even though they're very small, it's a way for us to kind of explore those experiences. So yeah, that was fantastic.
For sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All 3 readers were incredible. We are now into the part of our event where we can ask them some questions. And I think you've already been so generous with your creative processes and your influence as well. So that kind of sets us up perfectly to start our conversation. So if we can bring everybody onto the screen with me. Lovely. Come closer, come in. Get comfortable. Get yourself off mute. My mouse works now, so we're absolutely rolling. Hello, brilliant. So what will happen is, just to remind everybody in the audience, thank you so much for listening and for your lovely feedback there as well. Always slightly strange when we're performing on Zoom and when you're actually reading your work, not to have the instant feedback of the class. So thank you so much for taking the time to write in the chat box. If you have any questions, I'm going to start us off and I'm going to ask our writers some questions. But if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat to Lauren, who is currently labelled as Wow Mod. And then if that's a little bit tricky, you can just send them straight to me and I'll ask some questions. So everyone's looking slightly nervous. Don't be nervous. You know mostly what questions are coming. Yeah, I just wanted to really talk to you. I thought we could just let the audience in really on what Write What's Next has been like for you, what working with Joelle Taylor has been like, and just sort of chat through some of your creative processes. So if we start off with a nice easy one, what have you enjoyed on Write What's Next? Was there anything that you came into expecting one thing and were surprised with another? Maybe I could come to you first, Amy.
Yeah, sure. I didn't really have too much expectations. I hadn't really come across performing or performance poetry before. I've always known sort of page poetry, and boy, Joelle Taylor really went to task. She really offered this amazing education about the history and everything that's happened in performance poetry here in the UK. And the amazing work and the public engagement that happened. I hadn't expected that I would get that excited about it, even though I was like, I don't know if I want to be a performance poet, but she really helped us just kind of like take it in baby steps and make that process happen. And eventually now we have performed. So it was quite intense, which I really enjoyed that amount of time I could spend with Joelle. All of us had time together, working together, all the three of us, and then we had individual time too, which was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Chris?
So what was the question? What was the question?
Tell us experience on Write What's Next. What was it like in with Joelle, and also, you know, when you went into that, what were you expecting, and what was there any surprises that you came out with? It's one of the amazing things to get that kind of that feedback, is that often people come into our courses expecting something and come out completely impacted in totally different ways. So I just thought we could let
I guess I didn't expect it to be so well. For this course there were only three of us, so like I didn't expect it to be so like that we'd get given so much time and like space to explore things and interact with each other, and that was like really amazing and really useful, and just to have just to have the experience of being mentored by Joelle, that's the great thing about Zoom and technology, that we could do that, and she was just amazing. She was just very she was just really generous, always really like generous and encouraging with your work, but at the same time she could really draw out what was interesting in it and what was important about it, and you just felt like she really understood you and had your back, and she could like just encourage you to make your work like better. And it was really, and the course was really like detailed and in-depth. Joelle taught me loads about poetry that I didn't know, and she didn't like dumb it down or anything. She just went in with all her knowledge and put it out there, and it was great to like have access to someone like that where you could just like pick up all this stuff from. So Joelle was brilliant and really lovely, great person. Yeah.
And what about you, Jack Doll? Were you writing poetry before the course? How was it for you?
I dabbled in it a tiny amount, but I didn't really think I had a whole lot of talent in it, if I'm completely honest. And I think that, not to repeat everybody else, but that is one of the amazing things about Joelle, is she she looks at your first very bad attempts and she can see the potential in them, and she knows just how to draw it out and see what you can do. And she's really good at praising the elements that you've done well and making you believe that you are actually good at this. And even when she criticizes you, you can tell it's from the real place of knowing what you're capable of. And yeah, this is the first time I've ever really done anything like this, and I had no idea what to expect, but it really has been amazing. I've learned so much, and you can tell that Joelle loves this with her whole heart and soul, and that really carries over to how she teaches us and everything we've learned, I think. And it was just an amazing experience, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing I want to talk about is the title of the poetry. The poetry pamphlet is called Ghost Bones. Okay? That's a bold title. I'm on about how that came about. So whoever would like to tell that story, jump in.
I think I'll start, but I'll hand over to my two wonderful poetic colleagues. We were asked to kind of come up with some titles. I think we originally played with the word taxonomy, and then we thought, well, that doesn't really quite bring everyone in together. So Joelle facilitated this really great brainstorming session via Zoom, where we each had to come up with 3 titles. I think she gave us like 5 minutes? Like, really 5 minutes. Joelle, like, lightning speed. All right, 5 minutes, let's find out something. And so then we went through everything that we had and we kind of voted. I think I came up with Ghost Bones. I just kind of considered Jackdaw's work and the theme of something under the surface, but something ancient. And then Chris talked a lot about, like, you could tell he was dealing with the kind of ghosts of former relationships he had. And I had a little bit of that running through some of the other poems I had. And so I kind of went for that. But I think we played around quite a lot because there were some really other good names we were thinking of. But I think if I remember, that's how it went down. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, Amy came up with the title, and it just seemed to work to have something ethereal with something earthy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
No, go on.
No, it was that kind of, I suppose, contrast between something. I suppose, in a way, the two forms of death, and you have the bones, the very physical, tangible objects, and then you have the ghosts, which, in a way, is, I suppose, the memories and the spirits, and to kind of combine them in that way.
Exactly. There's really great emojis for Ghost Bones. So.
That was when I first heard the title and I hadn't yet read the manuscript. I felt like bold title. You're not going to forget it easily. But I didn't have the context. And then as soon as I'd read your work, I was like, oh, wow, they have completely encapsulated what they're doing here. I'm just laughing because there's a couple of WoW members watching tonight, WoW team members tonight, and your kind of gauntlet of fire that you held for your title is exactly what we do at Writing on the Wall. We all sit down, it's all fast paced, everybody
throw it in, see what happens.
You know, when you hear, like, I don't know, other people doing stuff and you're like, no idea is a bad idea. That is not the case. You get some really good natured ribbing if you come up with a differ. So congratulations on coming up with a good one. Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but if you do have any questions, I'm just going to check my chat box. I've not done this for a while. Let's see what we've got. So we've got 1 or 2 coming through, but just keep them coming through if you've got any questions for our writers, and I'll carry on with mine. So you did talk a little bit about some of the influences, which was fantastic, and letting us into kind of how you created these, why you created them. But I wanted to ask a little bit about your writing process. So it's always something that we try and demystify when we get a Q&A or a workshop going, is what is it for you that takes the writing from your head onto the page? What is your process? What do you need around you? Tell us a little bit about that. So if we start with you, Jackdaw.
I suppose, to borrow Amy's theming, what I imagine it's like to make a marble sculpture, in that you have to get the very vague outline of what you want to get across and what you want to say, and just get it on the page. Even if it's terrible and it's not really even a poem, it's just a bunch of lines. Once you've got that kind of core idea there, you can then, get your hammer and chisel and start turning it into an actual structured poem. And that was very difficult for me, because before this I was very much do the first draft and then it's done. And on this course I really had to rework a lot, especially as I continued learning from Joelle and learn new techniques and just found my own writing style. Some of the poems in the book I started back in August, and I was refining them up until I think actually 2 days after the deadline. So I think it's kind of a balance between having that core idea and sticking to it and working out how to best show it, but also knowing when to look at something and go, yeah, this is done. I don't need to take any more off of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that really resonates, and it's having a different hat on when you come to it as well, like writing hat now, and I don't need to criticize myself and edit myself, and then later on you can come back to it with a different viewpoint. Thank you, Jackdaw. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about your process?
Yeah, I mean, my process is pretty similar to Jackdaw. I just usually start with just phrases and words or combination of words that I feel I need to express about something. But through this process, what I really learned through working with Joelle is to pinpoint what it is you're trying to say, because you can say quite a lot in a poem, but Joelle really asked me, she's like, what is that one emotion? What is that one thing that this is really, really about? And does everything that you write serve that? And I think that was something that really helped free me up, because I've written several versions of things that didn't make it to Ghost Bones or were a very early iteration. And I think Joelle really freed me up, and she was like, okay, yeah, you wrote that. That's great. Now what else can we do with that? Or what else can we do? And she was a really big fan of the idea of how can we turn it on its head now? So it's like, that's one. Yep, done. Next one. How can we turn it on its head? And that continual process of working like that really appealed to me, because it's super exciting. And you don't really feel like you've abandoned your former work, because you can do other things with that work. And I think that just to keep writing is really the key for me. It's like, don't stop, because when you stop, you're not writing, and you're not a writer anymore. You're just not writing. So I think that was a really great thing that I learned, and I'll keep doing that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And Chris?
Yeah, just don't know. Just it's just important to do it, isn't it? To exactly what Amy just said. You just have to write rather than not write, rather than not procrastinate on it. And I always just try. I mean, something we learned with Ginny from the previous workshop, I just do 15 minutes writing morning pages routine, where not that I write every day, making it sound like I wake up every morning and write, but that's just what it's called. So you just, before you start writing, you just write 15 minutes of waffle just to get everything out of your system, and then you begin your writing. And then I just write with a pen on paper. I don't type. I just want to get the closest connection between what's going on in here onto the paper, and then type it up. And like Jackdaw said, I'd usually be happy with the second or third draft, but then Joelle was made us we had to keep chipping away. And then some of the poems I wrote had 8 drafts, and Joelle really encouraged us to keep chipping away at them. And yeah, that's kind of my process. I wish I could say I do it every day religiously, but it's not always possible.
And with, you don't need to. You make it your writing process of your life. Everyone has. Just to sort of circle back a little bit to the morning pages and the writing bursts, it's something you said you did with Jenny, and that's on our Right to Work course.
Yeah.
Right across all of our programs, from What's Your Story to our children's programs, and also on our Right to Work. And if anybody isn't familiar with it in the audience, I would really recommend giving it a go. You set yourself a timer. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 15 minutes, and you have something to write with. And you write, and you don't have to worry about editing yourself. You don't have to worry about doing anything great. No one's going to read it. You can literally write whatever you want. But as Chris said, it often takes away that first layer of waffle when you're coming to write. So definitely recommend that if you're anybody that often stares at a blank page. We have some questions coming in from the audience, so I'm going to read these out for us. Let's have a look. From Emma, all of your work was really vulnerable, powerful, and inspiring. How was that as a journey? What did you find difficult? If we start with you, Chris, and then we'll work back.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it was just had to. It made me tired doing it. Definitely, and yeah, but it just felt like stuff that had. I knew that we were having a baby, so this was just stuff that I wanted to get out before the baby was born, and it's kind of like things that are in my family that I find it difficult to talk about with them. So I've always found that writing and creating things is like the healthiest way for me to not just to deal with them, but like to show my perspective to people. And yeah, so yeah, and I like I although I say I found it tiring and stuff, I do like that you can put your vulnerability on the page, and that because it feels like really like kind of like dangerous when you're like writing it down in the middle of the night or whatever it is. But then when it's like an event like this or another event where you read it out or you hear someone read it, then that sort of vulnerability just like transforms into something like that's more powerful for you and everyone to share. So I really like that. Yeah.
That's incredible. I completely agree. Amy, would you?
I mean, there's other work in Ghost Bones that's far more personal, and I think one of the ways that I kind of get to deal with this is I find it quite cathartic, because it gives me permission to be as angry as I want or to withdraw. So in the case of like what I read today, Fragment and Fragments, I was able to withdraw a little bit of the anger because I was thinking, if I'm going to embody a sculpture with a voice, what kind of voice is it going to be, and how, pardon my language, how pissed off are they going to be? And how am I going to contain that? And one way I did that with that particular poem is I made witnesses to tell the story rather than tell the story in the first person. I love that poetry can do that it makes you really consider yourself. You're talking about morning pages. Morning pages are a fantastic way of getting into poetry or getting into any writing, really. And they're certainly cheaper than getting a therapist. And I feel like that is what poetry is. It's a form of kind of therapy. I don't mean to make it sound smaller than it is, but it is. It's something where you have control over how you want to address something. You have that kind of control. I enjoy that difficult journey. I've enjoyed also being with both of my fellow poets on those difficult journeys together, because I think we've grown together as we've progressed, and it's been a real privilege to be with both of you. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, for sure. Likewise, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. And Jackdaw?
I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I hate talking about things, especially anything emotional or personal. And I think, in a way, something I always struggled with is I've never really felt able to share my experiences in a way, because once it's out there in plain writing or just plain speech, it feels out of my control in a way. And one thing I found quite helpful during this is, for me, I suppose poetry is a very good way of telling a story without ever having to explicitly say what it's about. So and it's something that's entirely in my control. I write it, I edit it, and nobody can really change it in a way. And I think another thing that was important for me was I will always know what I was thinking about when I wrote it and what experiences I was drawing from. But once it goes out into the world and other people read it, they'll all relate to it in their own way and apply it to their experiences. And I kind of like that in a way, both that it will always be something for me and me alone, but also other people are able to find it helpful or cathartic for them as well, for their own experiences. And in a way, it's kind of a way to share having to deal with these kinds of things.
Yeah, massively. I think I really liked what you said there about not having to explain everything or it to be really explicit, and that's what I think one of the strengths of poetry is that you don't have to understand everything as the reader. You can just feel it. And I think that's something you've done, all three of you have done, audience, tonight. I'm just looking at the time, and I'm just going to finish up with a last few questions from our audience. We've had some brilliant ones. A couple of people have made some comments as well. So vulnerability transforms into power and courage. Just harking back to what you said there, Chris. Let's have a look. So we've got an advice question. So I'm not looking to everybody for this. I'll just pick one person for each you may be picked. So the first one is, best piece of advice Joelle gave you, give us a sound bite. Has anyone got one that they can think of other than you?
I'll just repeat the one that I said before, and it really is, and she said it over and over again, was, turn it on its head. How can you keep turning what you're writing on its head and keep going?
Yeah, brilliant. And then, is anybody feeling brave enough to give a piece of advice to a budding poet? So there's lots of people here tonight who may be, thinking about putting pen to paper, already been putting pen to paper. I can see lots of familiar faces from our courses as well. Hello. So what's your advice for them?
Honestly, just write it. And I mean, once you've got the basis down, another good thing is to look up poets online, especially spoken word poets, I'd say. I was actually quite lucky in a sense that I actually joined the program quite a bit before Amy and Chris. So for a while it was just me on my own, and we watched a lot of spoken word poets. And I think that's a really good way to kind of feel how a poem can go from the page to the stage. That wasn't meant to rhyme. And even if you don't want to perform your work, it's great to kind of get that voice in your head of how it's going to sound. So yeah, get it out there, but also feel free to take inspiration from literally everybody that you can.
Yeah, I agree, and don't think about the stigma of it being poetry, or does it have to be this, that, or the other, especially if you're not coming from that background where you've read loads of poetry. I don't know very much at all, and so don't worry about what poetry is, because what we found out from this course is that it's just your voice, basically, how you express things. So just express yourself, write something down. Yeah, because then you can worry about how the form of it later if you need to.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I've absolutely loved talking to all three of you. Thank you so much for your answers and letting us in. Is there anything you'd like to finish up? Anything you'd like to say before I answer some of these questions, like where can we get this book?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who made this possible, because it's been amazing. And if you'd told me a year ago that I'd be doing a book launch, I'd be like, what are you talking about? And yeah, I guess just to, oh God, not to sound very preachy, but as last bit of advice is like, with your writing stuff, whether or not it's good or not is subjective, but it will always be yours, and nobody else will be able to make what you make.
Nice one.
Yeah, I concur. Definitely, I agree.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
No, thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Georgia.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Emma. Thanks,
everyone.
everyone who came tonight. Thank you so much. That's so sweet that you spent the time to come see us. Thank you.
Yeah, I also just want to say a quick thank you to Amy and Chris, because next to them, when I started, I felt like a little baby bird who had been born 10 minutes ago, and they've been so wonderful to me, and it's been amazing to work with them on this.
We love you, Jackdaw. Also, we should probably mention as well, which we haven't yet, is that when the book does come out, Jackdaw has the most amazing illustrations to accompany our work, and we are so incredibly thankful that you put together such professional and amazing, beautiful illustrations. Thank you so much. I never thought I would ever get to say I'm a published poet, but I'm a published poet with really great illustrations. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jackdaw. Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me
thanks, Amy.
such amazing work to work with, honestly.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you will be able to see the incredible designs by Jackdaw very soon. We've done a cover reveal already, so you will have seen it. But in about 2 weeks' time, you will be able to purchase the book in News from Nowhere in Liverpool, and also online as well. What I'd like to finish up with now, before I go to my thank yous and tell you more about what you can see with Writing on the Wall this weekend, is a snippet of Joelle Taylor's foreword in the book. I'm not reading all to you, because if you want to read it all, you will have to buy the book. But I just think it's really important to share this with you. So the course has worked towards giving a platform for those often excluded from traditional entry points into publishing. It has never been more important to seek out work that is plural, innovative, and challenging, and crucially, writing that navigates new narratives. It has never been more important to highlight the work of underrepresented writers, to drag the margins into the center of the page. This work is one of those pamphlets that you will explore entire worlds. You will go back in time, forward in time. You'll be invited into the most intimate moments, and it's everything that we've talked about tonight. So I'd really encourage you to go out and to buy it in 2 weeks. So I just want to say thank you so much to Amy Blackledge. Woo! Jack and Chris Jenkins. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think what an incredible evening of poetry. You brought so much of yourselves to this poetry, to your performances, and like we discussed, it connects you to everyone and makes them feel part of it. And tonight you brought us all in, so thank you so much. Thank you to Joelle Taylor, our mentor for this group, for Write What's Next. As we've heard tonight, Joelle Taylor brings the skills, the knowledge, the humor, the burning creative energy that makes anyone who comes anywhere close to her orbit want to write and be fired up, creative. Thank you to our whole WOW team. It's really important to say that this is a team effort at WOW, and while I might manage this project and be involved day to day, there are many involved in our team who make it a success. Our co-directors, Madeline and Mike, who are here tonight, and very importantly, we would have no rudder for this ship without our head of programs, Emma Hume, the wonderful Lauren Buxton, who keeps our wheels turning. How many metaphors can I fit into this one? And keeps us all smiling. Jenny Dalton, who has been essential to bringing us this collection together into the marvelous manuscript that you will be able to buy in 2 weeks' time. So please do. And also Georgia, who is our window to the world on social media. So look out for what George is posting about in 2 weeks to find out where to buy it. Thank you very much to our funders, European Social Fund, Education and Skills Funding Agency, and the Liverpool Combined Authority, our wonderful fund managers at the WEA, particularly Lisa Smalley. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us tonight and for your brilliant questions, as always. And I just wanted to take one moment to tell you that we do have more creative releases coming your way. This Saturday, Wow will be at Liverpool Central Library for the Year of Writing celebration event. Together with lots of brilliant other organisations from around Liverpool, we are bringing you workshops from published writers, performance, exclusive readings from Yvonne Battle-Felton, one-to-one advice from the Liverpool Literary Agency, and we'll also be hosting 3 live launches of 3 brand new books and YA fiction from our Write What's Next participants from a different mentoring group. It has just been prolific, the amount of work that's produced on this course. So come along, it's at 11 a.m. on Saturday the 26th of February, which is this Saturday, at the Liverpool Central Library. There is loads more information in our chat here, so you can follow the link there, or you can go to our website and our What's On page. We would love to hear your feedback from this event. As always, you can't get away from us. We'll be sending you a link with a monitoring form. It only takes a few minutes to fill it in, and it is really important that you tell us what you like, and your thoughts will shape our future events. So with that, thank you again to all of our writers and everybody who's joined us tonight, and I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Amy. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.